How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask anything about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated your question might be. So you don't have to worry about getting roasted or judged for your questions on this live stream. We don't believe in that here. There is no such thing as a dumb question. You can ask whatever you like, and so long as you are asking in good faith, you will be given a good faith answer in response. Everybody is welcome here, Republican, Democrat, and everything in between and on the outskirts. So if you got a questions about politics, just put them in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a perfectly objective and accurate and sincere answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it, and I especially know that politics can be weird these days to try to figure out what's going on because of all the misinformation that's out there and propaganda and whatnot. So, where can you go? Where can you turn to get all your answers? All your questions answered. You can come right here to the Ask Me Anything About Politics live stream. Just go ahead and throw your questions in the chat, and I will get to answering them. I hope that everybody is excited about the weekend. Everybody's excited about having a little bit of time off to just rest and relax, or, maybe you work on the weekends and you're excited about getting back into the grind of things. But, if you're here and you got questions about politics, all you got to do is put them in the chats and we will get to answering them. I know that politics is particularly weird these days. There's a lot of rule breaking and norm bending that's going on. And what's up, Average Joe? Good to see you again. So, yeah, it can be really difficult to parse what's regular, what's actually happening, what's bullshit, what's misinformation. And so you can ask all those questions here. If you're a Republican, you are not going to get yelled at for asking Republican questions. I don't care if you're further to the left than me or further to the right than me. This is not a show for fighting. This is not a show for trying to own people or win debates. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Maybe you're somebody on the right and you've always wondered why Democrats are the way that they are. So long as you're asking in good faith, then I will answer you in good faith. I feel like part of the problem with our politics these days is that we always just assume the worst about each other. And so maybe you are a person on the right and you are not about that kind of fighting life and fighting culture, and you just want to have a good faith discussion. You want to have some good faith engagement with somebody on the left, and maybe we can come to some sort of a compromise or understanding, or at least a shared reality, a shared understanding of what's actually going on in the world and in our country. This is the place where all of that can happen. So if you've always wanted to ask certain questions, but you're worried that it would make you sound uninformed or like a MAGA person or like a libtard person, then this is the place where you can ask all those questions, because there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. What's up, Lauren? Good to see you again. And it is 3:20, and I have made many announcements about how this was going to happen today. We were going to do a later live stream today. Of course, Lauren. I know I was teasing you guys. Not Ova says, I have a question. All right, put it in the comments. Misty Lane says, and make absolutely sure you like the stream and or follow. I appreciate that, Misty Lane. Thank you so much. Michael Matter says Trump 2028. So, Michael, that's not a question. I'll give you one more opportunity to ask a question, or I'm going to boo you. So, yeah, any questions about politics, everybody? Just throw them in the chat. So, not Oba, I never bring people up at the beginning of the show. If I ever bring people up, it is always later on. So you can put your question in the chat, or you can hang out for a little bit, and then maybe you'll get lucky and I'll bring you up. It is not unheard of, but it is irregular. I am mercurial about it. I do it when I want, and I don't adhere to any sort of schedule or authority. Gare says, "Hi, I'm from Denver. How much Tylenol do I need before I can finish writing my dissertation?" I mean, I guess it just depends on how many headaches you get while you're doing your dissertation. I know you're making a joke about Tylenol causing autism, which it doesn't. Alrighty, Scott, that's very funny. Rainbow Barbie says, "Does this recent blue wave make you hopeful for 2026?" I'm like semi-hopeful. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, if anything, we are seeing that the work is working, and that all of our election systems and information systems have not been fully captured by the right-wing MAGA machine. And so there is hope, but we have to keep on doing the work, and we need more people doing the work, because knowing that the ability for us to hold the Trump administration accountable is there in 26, them and their billionaire buddies are just going to be ramping up all of their, shenanigans to try to lie, cheat, and steal their way into a victory in 26. So we can't rest on our laurels. We can definitely, take the weekend to celebrate, but then we got to get back to work on Monday. Shork says, is it possible for Groypers to take over Republicans, and can that be a good thing? I don't know. It's like the Republican coalition is such a weird combination of like Christian nationalists, white supremacists, economic conservatives, just old people who just that's who they've always voted for. So yeah, I think that the more visible the extremities of the Republican Party can become, potentially we'll see more fracturing happen in that base. And the Groypers are not universally popular. Like there is not a majority of support for the kind of misogyny and racism and anti-Semitism that is at the foundation of the Groyper movement. BMAX says, should Democrats consider passing the budget to get SNAP benefits going, or stand their ground? They should stand their ground, because people are going to suffer unless Democrats get these healthcare subsidies included in the spending bill. So people are either going to suffer now, when we could potentially still get the healthcare subsidies, or they're going to suffer in the future when it will be too late to get the healthcare subsidies. And so everybody's healthcare costs are going to go up like a whole bunch, What's up, Mel? Good to see you again. Ryan Mizertinez says, opinion on abortion. I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats, because Democrats are the only party that has policies that actually decrease the number of abortions. Things like raising the minimum wage, family planning, sex education, supporting the unions. All of those make it so that people don't feel like they can't afford to have a child, and it gives them the information they need to not become pregnant in the first place. Republicans only ever ban abortion, and that doesn't decrease the number of abortions, doesn't stop abortions. All it ever does is make pregnancy more dangerous for women. Mouse says, Dem or Republican? Democrat. Oof. All right. Let's see here. Nate the Great says, not the role of federal government. What's not the role of federal government? Andrew Cabello says, are you pro-Israel? I am pro every country in the world, but I am anti the government of Israel. I am pro the people of Palestine, but I am anti-Hamas. Preppy123 says, what are your opinions on the SNAP deductions and what it has done to families? I mean, any time we take money away from social safety net programs like welfare, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, unemployment insurance, like it just hurts people. Unless you're like extremely rich, in which case you're probably cool with it, And so yeah, it's fucked up. It's fucked up that the big beautiful bill, as they call it, has massive cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and all these other social welfare programs that help people. They don't just help people that use them, they help everybody else as well. Eddie Quintero says, are you in support of Medicare for all? I am 100%. But whenever people talk about Medicare for all, I feel it is necessary to mention two things. Number one, it is like we have not won the messaging battle for Medicare for all. Medicare for all, universal health care, is still more unpopular in America than it is popular, according to some polling. And so we need to do the work of doing more convincing that Medicare for all, universal health care is the move. And number two is that in addition to, like the billionaire class wanting to keep the private insurance industry the way that it is so that they can continue making money hand over fist, it's also important to recognize that, so they're going to be working against us transitioning to Medicare for all. But even if they weren't, even if everybody was just on board and like, all right, let's do it, the transition is going to be difficult. And I think that people need to be prepared for that. It will be difficult and potentially expensive to make the switch, and all of the various little bits of intricate, business that's going to take to get from one system to another. But still, we should 100% do that. But people need to be clear-eyed about that, so that that cannot be used against us. Like as the process takes a while and a lot of time and energy, People are going to start writing op-eds about like, oh, I thought this was going to be easy. All right, Misty Lane says, do you buy into all the Mamdani hate? No, I like Mamdani. I find a lot of the hate to be very hyperbolic. A lot of it is Islamophobic and racist. Average Joe, I'll get to that one in a second. It's the Rocketeer says, call me a Geridus Emeritus, the way I be Baron his Steen. I don't get that at all, it's the Rocketeer. I'm going to have to Google that joke later. Piano Tutorials, this is someone from Britain. What are your thoughts on Keir Starmer's digital ID plan? I don't know enough about it, so sorry. My expertise is in American politics. All right, back over to these TikTok comments. Alrighty. Arrow Abraham, good to see you again. Says, are you following Illinois Congress primary for District 9? If so, opinions of the candidates? I am not, unfortunately. Adam870 says, thoughts on Reagan? Reagan was a pretty big piece of shit. Like, we are seeing the knock-on effects of a lot of things that that he did during his 8 years in power. And so, but he's definitely better than George W. Bush was, and he's better than Donald Trump was. Currently is. But I probably wasn't as good as Nixon was. Okay, the truth teller of official US says, how can you be Islamophobic when you aren't scared of them? Well, that's not necessarily what that means. So we use the suffix phobic to not just mean that you're scared of somebody, but also that you are irrationally hate that group of people. So when we say homophobia, we don't necessarily mean that those people are scared of gay people, but just that they hate those gay people. And so, yeah, Islamophobia, exact same thing. Hambone says, you skipped my other question. I didn't see it. Hambone says, you think Carter was a better president? So I think Carter was definitely a better person than Ronald Reagan. Whether or not he was a better president, I'm not 100% sure on, just because I'm not a history major. Like, I have heard people say that as good of a person as Carter was, he wasn't a very good president. And I have not looked into that claim at all. But just based on the fact that he seems like a pretty good guy, I kind of wonder if we think he was a bad president because powerful interests were, successful in, torpedoing his administration. But, I could be wrong about that. I need to look up. I need to go into that. Mason Gott says, Jarrett, you truly have no idea other than far left ideas, which is part of the problem. No, I don't, Mason. Did you think that I've said things that are inaccurate, Mason? Because I'm happy to answer all your questions, don't just throw shade, man. Ask a question, be part of the conversation. Chat says, why is voting rigged? And what is the point of voting if our vote doesn't matter? Voting is not rigged. There are definitely ways in which the Republican Party has tried to suppress the vote and lie and cheat and steal their way into winning elections. But voting still makes a huge difference. Like we just watched a massive blue wave happen that is going to be transformational for the people that live in those various cities and states. Alrighty, Annie Oakley says, do you think we should general strike? Yes, 100%. The Truth Teller says, what if we had a nationalist president that wasn't funded by Israel and never kissed the wall? I mean, I don't think that we should be nationalist. Nationalist is kind of like, blindly believing in the supremacy of your country over others, as opposed to being patriotic, which is, supporting your your fellow citizens and your government and your country, but recognizing that there are things that you can do better, and constructive criticism, and also that every other country has value as well. Alrighty, user bunch of numbers says, what makes you a political expert that doesn't involve Google? I read a lot and I pay a lot of attention to politics. J-Rod says, are you in support of price control? So price control is a tricky subject because as it has been tried in the past, it has led to some deleterious knock-on effects. They famously tried it during the Nixon administration, and it led to, it kind of damaged things in the economy. But things need to be done to address the cost of living crisis. And so where we can try different mechanisms of bringing costs down, figuring out where all this money is being funneled to, I think that we should 100% be looking into that. But there are other ways that we can handle that. Like we can subsidize various industries and pay for those subsidies by taxing the rich. Like that's just another way of making things more affordable. Alrighty. Misty Lane says, but it is an irrational fear to think all of them are terrorists and they are trying to replace Americans to force everyone to be Muslim and bring jihadist law to America. That is accurate, Misty Lane. Okay, Kamor says, MAGA. That's not a question. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to block you. Hambone says, damn it, you skipped my prompt again. I'll look for it. Truth Teller says, I'm really starting to like this guy. You earned me a follow, brother. Thank you, Truth Teller. User a bunch of numbers says, may a life find you one day. More than one life has found me. Your mom's life has found my dick, for example. Okay, Zach Bayer says, do you agree with government-run grocery stores? Yeah, I don't have a problem with government-run grocery stores. The point of a government-run grocery store is not to compete with private grocery stores, but to provide grocery stores where there are currently none, where there are food deserts. Nets Clip says, are you a communist? Yes or no? Hurry up. I'll take my sweet ass time. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I told your mom when I was having sex with her last night. And no, I am not a communist. I am not a socialist. I am not a capitalist. I believe in a mixed system. We currently in America have capitalism and communism and socialism. I just think that we have maybe a little bit too much capitalism right now, so maybe we need to rebalance things a little bit. Hambone says, shush, you never served in the military then, LOL. I did never serve in the military, so I don't really know what that is in reference to. J-Rod says, can we start by encouraging others to stop being consumers? I'm part of the rich that you are trying to tax. All right, well, I sure hope that you're cool with us taxing you. And as far as like stopping people from being consumers, like it's very difficult to not be a consumer unless you have land that you can farm on or livestock that you can breed. Everybody needs to buy food and shelter and healthcare and education and stuff like that. So there's no real option for just not being a consumer. Right. Poe Miller says, you're ignorant if you think socialism works better than capitalism. I mean, there are certain things that work better in socialism. There might be certain things that work better in capitalism. But they do work together really well. Like we have both socialism and capitalism in America, Poe Miller. Jose Arujo says, you are late. No, I am not. I scheduled this, Jose. You should have seen that. Nets Clip says, you don't have to. I don't have to what? Poe Miller says, only the ignorant think socialism works better. Poe, I'm getting tired of you. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Seymour says, what do you think about Democrats shutting down and taking food stamps? Democrats did not shut down the government, Seymour. And the food stamps would be funded, but Trump is artificially stopping funding of food stamps. Mason Gott says, your party, you used the wrong has lied during elections, ruined the peace in major cities, and brought violence. So that's not accurate, Mason. Also, that's not a question. Ask the question, I'm going to boot you. Hambone says, scroll up and read the prompt I put in 3 times. If I missed it every single time, Hambone, potentially TikTok is censoring it. Lucid Dream says, poll the Cuban population in Miami for their thoughts on a socialist state. So the Cuban government is not socialist. It is an authoritarian government. Just because a country calls itself socialist does not mean that it is socialist. North Korea calls themselves a democratic republic. Do you really believe that North Korea is a democracy? All right. Rainbow Barbie says, I'm sorry, my wife I like, but do you dislike Mamdani? If so, why? No, I like Mamdani. Mason Gott says, speak facts, and you've ignored my questions. That is not a question, so congratulations, you are out of here. John868 says, what is your home state? I have lived in California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. Bruh says, I think if Dems could implement some sort of child care and rental relief would be helpful. Thoughts? Yeah, I'm 100% all for that. Netsclip says, I've been to North Korea. It's pretty chill. Sure thing, buddy. W. Tanner, good to see you again, says, is the New York new mayor for body work? I don't know what that means. The Truth Teller says, don't you think us whites are becoming a minority now? Aren't we like 8% now? I mean, I'm pretty sure that white people are still the majority in America, but, the longer that America continues and we continue to have legal interracial marriage and shit like that, then yeah, white people will probably become more of a minority as time goes on. All right, that dude PK says, doesn't socialism toe the line of dictatorship? I mean, I suppose you could make an argument that any both financial and governmental system toes the line of dictatorship. Capitalism also toes the line of dictatorship. When you have hypermonopolization the way that we do, when you have the privatization of government programs, what you're basically doing is giving your freedom up to the new king, the billionaire class who is in charge of all the resources. So yeah, communism, capitalism, socialism, like all of them could be dictatorships, but once they become that, then they stop being the thing that they were supposed to be. BB Fan, good to see you again, says, is this batch of responses going to make you not adjust your schedule too later in the afternoon? No, it's fine. I don't mind meeting different batches of haters, you know. Alrighty. Oh, did I never get to your question, Average Joe? Did you happen to see Greenblatt's week-long crash out over Mamdani's when? He said the ADL is launching an initiative to track Mamdani's policies. Where was this motivation after Elon Sig-Heils and Nick Fuentes anti-Semitism? I feel like the Islamophobia couldn't be any more clear at this point. I mean, 100%, Average Joe. There is no end to the way that somebody will target a left-leaning politician or content creator and disguise their attempts to torpedo them as fighting anti-Semitism or anti-white racism, or just insert any bullshit reason that you like. The truth teller says, I love Fuentes. I mean, you shouldn't. He's not a good guy. Austin Garza says, called him Sleepy Joe because we could sleep well at night. Yes, for real, man. Don't I fucking miss that. All right, Average Joe says, what's your subjective estimate of the percentage of Cuomo voters that were legitimate voters versus anti-Mamdani voters? Oh, I don't know, maybe like 10% anti-Mamdani voters? Says, do you think Islam is compatible with Western ideologies? Yeah, Western ideologies include the freedom of religion, and so every religion gets included in that, and potentially in every religion, including Christianity, there are precepts, especially in the religious texts, that do not align with Western ideals, like allowing other people to do whatever they want, so long as it doesn't infringe on your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Like, if you want to find examples of that, like the Bible is fucking riddled with it, and even modern day Christianity is riddled with it. Like, you could fucking throw you can't swing a cat in a red state without finding a Christian who's trying to infringe on your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So yeah, obviously every religion has, things in their sacred texts or certain extremist factions that are not ideal for a multinational, multiracial, multi-religious society. But there's nothing inherent in Islam that makes it like a worse, religion for mixing together with everybody else than any other religion. Okay, Truther says, what if we could have a dictator that everyone likes and agrees with? Obviously, not everyone will. I hope you're doing a bit, Truth Teller. So yeah, it doesn't matter who the dictator is or what their policies are. The issue is that the people need to have ultimate power. And if you have a dictatorship, you're taking that power away. You're taking away oversight. You're taking away balance of powers. You're taking away checks and balances, all the things that make it so that, we don't have concentration camps and a kleptocracy. Trix says Donald Trump is the best president of our lifetime. No, he's not. And that is not a question. So you're out of here. Congratulations. Crisco says, okay, if the Affordable Care Act is so affordable, why are subsidies given to make it that way? Because healthcare costs have continued to spiral out of control. The health insurance industry is a complicated beast, and the Affordable Care Act was meant to try to slow both the rate at which healthcare costs were accelerating and also mechanisms by which the insurance companies would discriminate against paying people for medical procedures that they needed, pre-existing conditions, for example. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. It's not universal health care. So, it needs amending, and it needs updates, but it is still better than if we did not have it. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. Okay, let's see here. Truth Teller says, honestly, I just love your talking points. I've been watching for a while on my For You page. Oh, thank you, Truth Teller. Rainbow Barbie says, the Republicans passed everything they wanted for next 20 years. How would America look in your opinion? Terrible. It would probably look a lot more like a fever dream of a white Christian nationalist, billionaire oligarchy, monopoly dictatorship, business monopoly dictatorship kind of a thing. Okay, Bandaboss says, did you ever consider joining the army? For a hot second. Dan Blackboard says, the dictator everyone likes, who not everyone likes. I think you forgot to carry the one on that, Matt. Very funny. Oh, excuse me. Alrighty, let's see what else we got here. Michael Matter says, do you think the USA should have more relaxed immigration policies like in a lot of European countries? So, I mean, I think there's a difference between, I guess it just depends on what you view as like your benchmark for more relaxed. So the Trump administration, for example, is not only cutting off all legal immigration except for people who are white and or rich, but also they are being barbaric and doing illegal unconstitutional things in the interest of booting brown people out of the country. And so obviously I would like a more quote unquote relaxed version of that. But I don't know if we're at a place where we should be doing just straight ass open borders, but maybe we could start by hiring more asylum judges and more immigration judges. Maybe we can clear up the path to citizenship so that it doesn't take people 15 years to become a citizen of America. Yeah, shit like that. Blessed says, how do you think this nightmare ends? If people like you and me do the work of making it end, Blessed, then we get out of this, lickety split, without our hair getting mussed. But if we don't do the work, then we're fucked. Rainbow Barbie says, do you think influx of people coming to America is the real reason we have housing crisis? No, it is not the real reason we're having housing crisis. No will live, no why live says, do you think after so many days of a shutdown we should have scab replacements for these bums? Do you mean in the government? I mean, if y'all want to try to replace your Republican members of Congress who are refusing to work right now, then fucking by all means, my guy. Tishy says, exactly, keep working on it. Thank you. Alrighty. Adam says, why is the government shut down? The government is shut down because the Republican Party is trying to make Americans suffer by ending healthcare subsidies. That is going to cause everybody's healthcare costs to skyrocket. And the Democratic Party is saying that we refuse to sign on to this budget unless you extend those subsidies so that people won't have to choose between eating and getting a medical procedure. And the Republican Party is saying, no, we're not going to do that. So we'll shut down the government and people can suffer right now or they can suffer later. It's your choice, Democrats. All right, BB Fan says, have you heard anything more re the Supreme Court and their review of gay marriage today? I have not heard any side of that. Now Will Live says, I don't claim either side, just for the record. I mean, I think you should claim the left. Now I live. There, I finally figured it out. Now I live. But yeah, what is it that makes you feel like you cannot claim the left side? Andrew says $47 billion in profit to the top 6 national insurers in 2028. Those are your Obamacare subsidies, Andrew. So it would be worse without Obamacare, Andrew. Insurers would have even more profit. Healthcare would be more expensive. More people would be dead without healthcare. John 868 says, do you get your vaccines updated? I sure do. Crisco says, you Americans seem to be going through a very turbulent time. We 100% are. Susie Queasy says, I hate when people say, oh, I don't claim either side. They are part of the problem. I mean, let's not shake our fingers at them. Let's just, encourage them to the right side. Troy Taguda says, Dems love filling the pockets of insurance companies. That is not a question. I remember your bullshit from a couple days ago, so you're out of here. Seymour says, billions to Ukraine when we have other problems. I mean, do you have a problem with billions to Israel, the way that Donald Trump is doing it? Do you have a problem with Donald Trump taking billions of taxpayer dollars and putting them in his pockets when we have other problems? Do you have a problem with building concentration camps, spending billions to increase the funding for ICE? Do you have a problem with building a fucking $1 million ballroom and renovating the White House instead of solving all those other problems? Now I live says, radical voices on either side of the aisle have the microphone needs to end. I completely disagree with that. Now I live. Right now, the most radical elements of the right are in charge of the government, and the left, the people that are elected on the left, is a mix of people from like AOC to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Jasmine Crockett. The Democratic Party is a big tent, so there is never an extremist faction that is in charge, unlike the Republican Party, which right now is just straight extremists. Like Donald Trump has a crypto coin. That's fucking bananas. That should not be allowed. They're building fucking concentration camps. Yeah, it's fucking insane, man. Susie Queasy says they are voting right now on a new bill put forth by the Democrats and Republicans, and the Republicans are voting no. That is accurate. Rainbow Barbie says, are you happy that Nancy Pelosi is retiring? Yes, 100%. C. Moore says, I don't have a problem with ICE. I agree with ICE. I mean, I don't think that you should. C. Moore, do you know anybody who has been illegally detained by ICE? Do you think that Law enforcement should just be able to snatch you up off the street, regardless of if you've done anything wrong, hold you in detention for 4 days, and then just let you go. People are missing the birth of their children. They're missing doctor's appointments that they desperately need because ICE is just deciding that they want to play fucking Gestapo. Like, do you think that's okay? All right, Zero says, what's the update on SNAP benefits? There's a lot of question marks. I'm worried. I am also worried, but I saw a report today that said that Trump was going to be forced to fund SNAP benefits through November. But, as with everything with Trump, we kind of have to wait and see because he likes to spit in the face of other authorities. All right, Average Joe. So sorry to my Twitch and YouTube. I've been ignoring you guys, but things are hot over here on the TikTok. All right, Average Joe says, as a voter yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, what would you grade a campaign philosophy that said they want to subsidize billionaires using your tax dollars? I want to subsidize your success using billionaire tax dollars. I love that. You know me, Average Joe PG. That's fucking right up my alley. Alex says, I'm giving $5,000 to the first 5 people to message with believe. I don't believe that, Alex, but if any of you want to give that a go, I say give it a go. Alrighty. Rainbow Barbie says, if Trump is so anti-war, then why did he rename the Department of War the Department of Defense? So Susie, that is Susie, right? Oh, hold on a second. John 868 says, source on the concentration camps. People that study the Holocaust, people that are experts in concentration camps are calling what ICE is doing concentration camps. If you want more specific than that, shoot me a DM and I will happily give you all of the data. Not showing my pretty face says, why are you live now? Happy to catch you. Maybe you did not hear, but I did a late show last week, and so now I am doing like maybe one late show a week, depending on what my schedule looks like. I announce it beforehand. It's always updated on my schedule if you were ever curious. Alrighty. Bruh says, why did Trump appeal judges' orders for contingency funds? Because he wants Americans to suffer. Justified says, they are making them work for less than $1 a day. Modern slavery. That is also accurate. Lux says, I have a question. All right, put it in the chat. Alrighty. Let's see here. Going through. Now I live says, fair to some extent, leaving the Dems with no true leader. Again, now I live, you're saying that like it's a bad thing. Like you're saying that like it's a pejorative. Democrats don't necessarily need a masthead right now. Maybe we can just be a collective of a bunch of different groups of people who want to live together in America without fucking fighting each other, Lux says, how do you feel about the new mayor in NYC? I like Mamdani. I think he's cool. Not showing my pretty faces. Are we thinking people are really going to get their SNAP benefits? I mean, Trump has weirdly shown a number of times that he is worried about just straight up spitting in the face of the judiciary. Like sometimes he does what the courts tell him to do, which says to me that he knows that he's a lot weaker than he claims to be. And so, I'd say it's probably 50-50 whether or not he does what the judge tells him to do or not, but it is not a certainty that he will do whatever the fuck he wants. Alrighty, let's get back over to Twitch and YouTube. Misty Lane says, capitalism is a centralized government instead of the government, you have a billionaire running it all. Oh yeah, by the way, billionaire capitalists believe in communism, but only for the rich. So whenever someone asks, name one time socialism has worked, just point to Forbes. That is an excellent point. Misty Lane. And then Average Joe says, the question about Islam's compatibility and Western ideology is low-key insinuating Muslims in the U.S. want Sharia law. I don't think it's low-key at all, Average Joe. I think it's pretty high-key. Always remember that the Sharia law stereotype is nearly identical to what evangelical Christians are actively attempting to establish right now. Completely accurate, Average Joe. You nailed it once again. John Abbott says, USDA announced today that they're paying November SNAP benefits in full in spite of Trump's rhetoric. Well, that is excellent news. Thank you, John, for the update. Stubbs says, how many votes in the Senate will it take to reopen the government? How many Republicans in the Senate? I think there's 53 Republicans in the Senate. So if they don't get rid of the filibuster, it will take 60 votes to reopen the government just in the Senate, and then they would need a majority of the House. If they decide to nuke the filibuster, they only need a majority in the Senate. Bruh says, thoughts on our blue wave? Can we keep it going? That's a question for you and the dude or lady that you see when you look in the mirror, bruh, because it's up to us to keep it going. It is not, the blue wave, the resurgence of people voting for the Democratic Party does not happen, magically, mystically, like the tides or, the sun rising. It is people like you and me doing the work. Trey Johnson says Democrats are a clear and present danger to America and freedom. That is not a question. So you are out of here. Beast says they was all blue states anyway. There is no way they would have won regardless in the stactually. So that's not a question. It's also not true. So you are out of here. All right, so let's see here. Lady Brienne says, with what billionaires spend to get policies passed, do they really spend less than paying fairly? So, Lady Brienne, you make an excellent point. Now, they have run the numbers, and control is not something that necessarily equals a specific dollar amount. But being able to control what the government does, who people vote for, etc., is worth an infinite amount of money, considering that you don't know what industry loophole you are going to want to put into a bill tomorrow that is going to make you $500 billion. Like, look at the fucking Trump people right now are making more money than they could ever have dreamed just by having a cryptocurrency. And they had they didn't even fucking know what crypto was at the end of his first administration. So yeah, the answer is infinite. And that's why they're willing to spend infinite amount of money to maintain that control. Misty Lane, you can't say shit like that. That's very sweet. I'm just, yeah, you're gonna make me blush. All right. I'll get back. I'll get to that in a second. Average Joe. Michael Matter says, "Who is your first choice for 28 Dem presidential candidates?" I never wish cast for 28. Michael Matter. I'm just trying to get people focused on 26. We got midterms coming up that we need to run the table on. Kay says, "I just want to know what stactually means." Yeah, me too. Unfortunately, that person is no longer here for some reason. Empress says AP just reported the federal appeals court are leaving order in place for Trump to fully fund SNAP. Great to hear. Love to hear it. Average Joe says, do normie voters really consider every other justification for the disparity between Trump's statements and actions before they consider the possibility that he's a lying sack of shits? No, I don't think I don't think that they do. AJV says, are you American? Yes. Rainbow Barbie says, what are the midterm states for 2026? They are all midterm states, Rainbow Barbie. Every single state is having midterm elections. I don't know if every state is having a senator who is running for re-election, but every House seat is up for re-election in 2026. User a bunch of numbers says, do you think the Nordic model is S? I'm going to assume that S means like S tier, like very good. And the answer is yes. AJV says, because y'all don't know anything about politics. I mean, I know a lot. AJV, do you want to ask a question or would you just like to be mean? Shork says, with the new plan Dems came up with to try and open the government, why didn't they try it weeks ago? I don't know. Potentially they are just, in the process of negotiating and finding different avenues for making things work with the Republican Party. Seymour says, what do you think about Roe versus Wade? It was an excellent Supreme Court decision, and there are women who are dead today because the Republican Party decided to repeal Roe versus Wade. John 868 says, do you like chili cheese fries? They're pretty good. Michael Matter says, only 1/3 Senate seats up grabs every 2 years. Yes, that is accurate. But I don't know which states are included in that 1/3 in 2026. I don't have that information memorized. AJV says, mean cause the way America does policy and government and politics is beyond anything good at this point. Oh, did you mean like Americans don't know anything about politics, or I don't know anything about politics, AJV? Ready. Seymour says, what did that imply? What imply? What? Can you rephrase? Majid Squidquee says, hello back. Doug Askew, the Supreme Court ruled Roe versus Wade, dude. Yes, but they also did Dobbs. So, I don't know what your point is there. Let's see here. BB Fan says, with Prop 50 having passed, do we need other blue states to also adjust their redistricting? Yes. Seymour says, did it not leave the decision up to the state to decide how to handle the bill? Did it not? It did. But it was the Republican Party that made that happen. And it's Republican states that passed abortion bans that killed women who were not even trying to get abortions, who were just trying to have babies and had complications, and doctors were not sure if they could legally give women the abortions that they needed. So now they're dead. Alrighty. Luke says, what do you think about killing babies? I'm against it. That is why I vote Democrat, because I am for gun control. Tishy says, my opinion is they should get rid of the electoral votes. The people should vote. 100%. Let's get rid of the electoral college. There is a thing called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which would completely nullify the electoral college. We would not even need to have a constitutional convention. So call up your state representatives and ask them to sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact if they have not already. Seymour says it wasn't the party, it was the people of the state. No, it was the party, Seymour. There are states that are governed by Republicans that passed ballot initiatives to protect abortion access. And then the Republicans in control of those states just threw that in the garbage and said, well, we're going to ban abortion anyways. So yeah, man, so Seymour, I'm going to try to be as polite as I possibly can here. The Republican Party did not nominate a bunch of Supreme Court justices who just so happened to get a case undoing Roe versus Wade, which just so happened to allow a bunch of Republican states to make abortion illegal. This is a decades-long project by the Heritage Society, the Federalist Society, and the Heritage Foundation. I forget which one of those. But yeah, these judges were specifically picked to undo Roe, and states had their abortion bans ready for when Roe was undone. And there were cases that were farmed to the Supreme Court to specifically do this. Like, this is on the Republican Party's fucking plate. Blood is on their hands. And I don't put it on the voters' hands, Like, I like to try to have as much empathy for the voters as possible. You didn't know what you were voting for potentially, but the elected politicians, the billionaires who funded it, the people at Heritage and Federalist, like, they fucking have blood on their hands. There are women who are dead today because of the shit that they have done, because they want to have more control over all of us. And it's fucking disgusting. Alrighty, Misty Lane says, do all capitalist supporting viewers, if deregulated capitalism is the best form of government, why was the Gilded Age so horrible? That is an excellent question, Misty Lane. David Yamba says, was the German 1940s actually socialist? Why do people say that they were? So the Nazis in Germany in the 1930s, they called themselves I believe, the National Socialist Party. But again, just because you call yourself socialist or communist does not actually mean that you are socialist or communist. So no, the Germans in the 1940s were not actually socialists, they were fascists. Legamello says, in Michigan, we voted to codify abortion rights and Republicans tried to take them after anyway. That is an excellent point, Legamello. Majid Squid says, how do you see Mamdani's victory as mayor? I think it's great. I think it's a great sign for things to come. Susie says they also lied in their confirmation hearings. That is another excellent point. Seymour says, and it is we, the people, who elect these local representatives. No, Seymour, it's not. Because Republican states are heavily gerrymandered and they suppress votes for poor people and marginalized groups of people because they know that those people vote for Democrats. So even if you live in a state with a majority of Republicans, you still have more Republican representation in government at the state level than you should have because of gerrymandering and because of voter suppression tactics. Seymour says that is false. Well, send me a DM. I will happily send you all of the proof that you need. John says, do you believe in big government? No, but I believe in good government. Alrighty, let's see here. I don't. Michael says, I don't understand how Republicans support abortion, but then they will take SNAP benefits away from kids. So I think what you mean is they don't support abortion, but then they will take SNAP benefits away from kids. Yeah, they don't give a shit about kids once they're born. They want people to be desperate. They want people to be stuck with children that they can't afford to raise. They want you to be so desperate to survive that you don't have time to strike or boycott or protest or vote. They want you to be so desperate to survive that you can't try to get another job, that you have to take every job that you can possibly handle, even if it means degrading work or underpaid work or dangerous work. Even if it means your boss is sexually harassing you, you are forced to keep that job because you are desperately trying to survive. That's what they want. Alrighty, let's see here. User Watch Number says, will Mamdani's win change have a significant impact on the mainstream U.S. politics? Yeah, but I think that's, the same way that AOC's win and Trump's win and everybody who is kind of like a shot of new information into our government is going to change things either a little bit or a lot. Marley Poet says, will Democrats attach policies to their winning affordability messaging? I sure hope so. Let's see here. Bruh says Bernie should have won in 16. I campaigned for Bernie in 16. I was very upset that he did not win that primary, but he definitely did not win that primary. And it was not the DNC putting their finger on the scale that lost him that primary. It wasn't even close. Clinton fucking ran away with it. John 868 is his favorite football team. I don't really follow sports, but I heard that the Green Bay Packers are not for profit, right? And I like that, So Seymour says you need to glorify voting for local representatives. It's harmful to say otherwise. That has nothing to do with anything that we were talking about, Seymour. Carter says, will Mike Johnson get selected for another term? That is up to the people of, where is he a representative of? Louisiana? Tennessee? I forget. Ready. Let's see here. Tishy says, and then to top it off, there's a job shortage. People are having a hard time finding work. That is accurate. We are suffering from a rapidly increasing unemployment number, fewer jobs available because of artificial intelligence, and just at the same time as the government is decreasing funding for social safety net programs. Almost seems like it was designed in a lab to ruin everybody's lives. How about that? Short says, why can only red states gerrymander? It's not just that red states can only gerrymander, it's that red states have been ruthless about gerrymandering. And for a long time, the philosophy of the Democratic Party has been, if we are just, if we mirror upstanding behavior, people will see it and they will vote for us because of it. And we will win elections despite the Electoral College, despite gerrymandering, despite the Senate map. We will win because we are more morally pure than what the Republican Party is doing. The American people will see the Republican Party cheating and they'll decide not to vote for them because of that. But unfortunately, that is not what happened. So now blue states are getting into the gerrymandering game because the Democrats tried to make partisan gerrymandering illegal during the Biden administration and the Republican Party vetoed it. All right, John 868 says, what do you think about no taxes on Social Security? It's already taxed. I think that we should be doing everything we can to alleviate the cost of living on everybody in the middle class and below. And if that means no taxes on Social Security, then fucking go for it. If that means no taxes on tips, then fucking go for it. But we need to recognize that not taxing Social Security and not taxing tips is not enough. It is just one of many things that we should be doing. Slee says, and the reality is it isn't truly no taxes on Social Security. Looking to the details. That is what I read as well, though I'm not an expert, so I need to... I cannot opine about that. Ash Scholl says, they know they can't win vote for vote. That is accurate. Rainbow Barbie says, do you think if Democrats actually take the Senate and the House, they'll impeach Trump? 100%. So they don't actually need the Senate to impeach Trump. They only need a majority in the House. If they get 67 seats in the Senate, which is statistically improbable, but mathematically possible, then they could even remove him from office. But the only thing they need to impeach Donald Trump again is a majority in the House. And it would be insane if they did not do that. It would be completely fucking insane if they did not do that. Alrighty. Cox says, 3 watching, I had to join. 3 watching on YouTube, but I'm also on Twitch where I've got 5 people, and I'm on TikTok where I've got 77 people. So look who's fucking nailing it, everybody. Alrighty. Scott says, can't just roll over and let them cheat. Playing fair got us the current fascist. That is accurate. Carter says, what do you think about the new idea that's similar to the FSA flexible spending account? I am hostile to some of the band-aids that the Republican Party proposes in order to make up the deficit in spending for social safety net programs that they have cut. So it's like, yeah, FSAs could be like a useful thing, But what would be even more useful is if we had that and a fully funded SNAP program and a welfare program and Medicare and Medicaid. And if we, I don't know, taxed rich people so that they would pay their fucking fair share, you know? It's like they're not bad ideas. It's just the fact that they think that that's going to replace Medicare and Medicaid and welfare and Social Security. Like, that's the bad idea. James says, how can Democrats ever win if Republicans are always breaking the law and nobody can do anything? So James, the Democrats win regularly. We just had massive wins just this past week. So it is clear that the Republican Party has not fully captured our electoral systems, try as hard as they might. So yes, the Republican Party is going to try to do sneaky shit, illegal shit to lie, cheat, and steal their way into victory in 26 and 28. But that does not mean that they will be successful because our electoral systems are complicated and people are passionate about voting. And so, not enough people are passionate about voting. We don't have high enough voter turnout in this country by a long shot for my liking. But yeah, they have been unsuccessful in the past. They will continue to be unsuccessful in the future if good people like you and me continue to do the work of making sure that they do not take away our right to vote. Alrighty, Justified says billionaire bought machines. Yes, it is true that a MAGA voting machine company has bought Dominion, and so now they have a bunch of potentially compromised voting machines in various states. So what should we all do about that? Well, we should all call our secretaries of state and ask them, hey, are we using any of those machines? What are we doing to make sure that the numbers that come out of those machines are accurate, knowing that the person who owns that machine has a bias in favor of the Republican Party and our current president? So yeah, again, it is up to us. We need to demand accountability and oversight for our electoral systems. Alrighty. Tishy says some girls are giving you the cuckoo. Are they? I'm not seeing that. Oh, Skylar says bro is handsome. Oh, that's very sweet of you, Skylar. Me and potentially my wife is in here as well. Eric says, what are the pros of Marxism? It is a more theoretically, it is a much more equitable distribution of wealth and resources. Eric, thank you for your questions. Alrighty. James says, I am still hopeful, my friend. I'm so glad to hear that, James. Cynicism is what the Republicans want. Cynicism is what the billionaires want. They want you pessimistic. They want you to think that it's game over. And so when people like you and me refuse to believe that, it is a giant fuck you to them. Eric says, is it sustainable? I don't know. We've never seen any country ever really try it. Every country that calls themselves communist or Marxist has actually been an authoritarian dictatorship. We currently have communism in the world that is not necessarily called communism. So any company that is owned by its employees, like Bob's Red Mill or Publix grocery stores, that's communism. That is all that communism is the workers who make the value own the value that they make. So yeah, we have that in America, and we have socialism in America, and we have capitalism in America as well. Kay says, I actually feel more hopeful for the midterms because of how unhinged Trump has been. I'm glad to hear that, Kay, but let's not take our foot off the gas. I want to lock in these gains and then fucking push even further and faster. I will not be happy until the Republican Party is voted out of existence. Alrighty. M-Dog says, one party system is the only way. I don't know if I agree with that, M-Dog. Alrighty, everybody. We are almost at an hour, so get in your final questions. Ash Cole. Oh, sorry, I was trying to read that question, but then it scrolled to the bottom. M-Dog says, in America, you have the uneducated and democracy. Let's not be mean, M-Dog. Come on, man. Rainbow Barbie says, what are you, communist, Marxist, progressive? I call myself a progressive Democrat. I believe in a mixed model, so, a little communism, a little socialism, a little capitalism, etc. Right, Tishy says, we have to stay together and stay strong and keep fighting. That is wonderful to hear. Bruh says, need enthusiasm in 26 and 28. If you can catch some of mine, I will happily give it to you. Ready. Misty Lane says Democrats are all about almost winning, then laying down and losing politely. We as voters can do the work, but how can we make the actual people in power do the work too? Excellent question, Misty Lane. So there is this idea that the Democratic Party is like feckless and weak and ineffective, but I don't know how accurate that is. It feels to me part of a, what I view as a massive propaganda and misinformation campaign to paint the Democratic Party both as weak and feckless and ineffective, but also, sinister deep state operatives who secretly control all the levers of power. So yeah, every time people complain about like the ineffectiveness of the Democratic Party or their willingness to give up power in the name of compromise, what I see is politicians actually doing the work of government. And maybe we are seeing politicians like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries not meeting the moment by not playing as hard as they should be. But I would definitely not characterize it as them laying down and losing politely. But how can we? But if we're not seeing our Democratic politicians doing the work, that's what primaries are for, Misty Lane. So we primary them. But the answer cannot be that if the Democrat isn't doing what we want them to do, then we replace them with a Republican because the Republican does what the Democrat was doing, only 1,000 times worse. So you vote for the people that you want in the primary. If the person you don't like is in the primary, then you vote for the next best thing, the Democrat who did win the primary. And the great thing about Democrats, even the ones you don't like, is that they are more susceptible to political pressure than Republicans are. So you make a bunch of phone calls, you form a political action group in your community, suddenly your senator or your House member or your state senator or whatever suddenly is changing their tune a little bit, where Republicans, they just cancel their town halls and, disconnect their phone lines to stop people from yelling at them. All right, everybody. Technical Critic says, can I come up? No, Technical Critic. Sometimes I have people up, sometimes I don't. We are wrapping things up, so I am not about to start a conversation. Sean Carter says, but you don't replace them. No, Sean, we replace them regularly. Where do you think we got people like AOC? Where do you think we got people like Mamdani? We regularly replace our politicians via the primary. All right, everybody. Rainbow Barbie says, when will you go live again? My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Seymour says, I appreciate how civil you've been. I appreciate how civil you have been, Seymour. Like, I know based on your questions that we are diametrically opposed, but you are here in good faith, which is why I have not blocked you. Let's see here. Thank you again, everybody, for the support and the questions. If there were any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream or questions that come up when I am not streaming, DMs are open. Do not be shy about reaching out. I want to be a resource for you all. So if I can help you become more educated or activated or organized around politics, I want to be that resource for you. I want to point you in the right direction. So use me and abuse me. Use me until I'm all used up. You can DM me. You can email me through my website, or you can get in touch via my Discord. And I love the Discord, by the way, because it's a great place where you can find like recommendations as well. Like I have recommendations for books and podcasts and organizations for you to volunteer for and work that you can do to try to be a positive source of good work in these troubling and unprecedented times. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know we're all struggling financially. But I do have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. Shout out to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. BB Fan, I saw you here earlier. I don't know if you were still here. You can also buy things from my store on my website. Links are in the bio. And you can send gifts and become super fans and subscribers on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and all of that good stuff. The Twitch is growing, which I'm really excited about, but obviously we're still very small on the Twitch. So anything that you Twitchers can do to try to, get some more eyeballs over here, I would really appreciate that. Alrighty, let's see here. Sean Carter says, how old is the average Democratic congressman? I mean, you know that the oldest person in Congress right now is a Republican, right? Sean Carter. I mean, I get what you're trying to do here, man, but the Democratic Party has been replacing their old people with young people. Maybe they did not hear that message soon enough. Maybe they're slow rolling that policy, but it is happening. It is happening as we speak. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Everybody, have a great weekend. Be good to each other, be good to yourselves, and I will see you next week on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Not same bat time. We're going back to 11:30 starting on Monday. Alrighty, everybody. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.